God created this world from his world, and he's the only one that can do that. There's evidence that he exists, and there's evidence that Jesus was on this earth. When you go into a court, the witnesses has a very powerful testimony, because a lot of it is what people believed and what they saw. That is what we have in the New Testament. In the Old Testament, we have things like Noah's Ark. It's been proven that it actually exists, which is in Turkey, the mountains of Ararat, exactly where the Bible said it would be. A lot of places in the Bible have been found around Turkey and Israel in that area, just to prove that it does really, that what God says in the Bible is true. A lot of people used to think it was just stories made up, but they're finding these places and they're finding evidence of these people as well. And it's not just in the Bible, there are other writings as well. Roman historians have written about Jesus as well. So if we have to go on the evidence like they do in a court case, then there is proof that Jesus was on this earth and that he existed. If we read John 5 from verse 36, Jesus said, I have testimony weightier than that of John, for the very work that the Father has given me to finish, and which I am doing, testifies that the Father has sent me. And the Father who sent me has himself testified concerning me. So we can see that Jesus says there is proof and evidence of him and of the Father. You have never heard his voice, nor seen his form, nor does his word dwell in you, for you do not believe the one he sent. You diligently seek the scriptures, because you think by them you possess eternal life. These are the scriptures that testify about me, yet you refuse to come to me to have life. In those days, a lot of people didn't believe, especially the Jews themselves and the religious leaders. They were the ones that caused Jesus a sacrifice, his crucifixion. But it had to happen, and it had to be from one of Jesus' own people. It also says in John 6, no one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise him up at the last day. It is written in the prophets, they will all be taught by God. Everyone who listens to the Father and learns from him comes to me. No one has seen the Father except the one who is from God. Only he has seen the Father. I tell you the truth, he who believes has everlasting life. I am the bread of life. This word that we read is the bread of our life. And we cannot get to the Father unless we go through Jesus. It says in the prophets too, that we will be taught by God. And everyone who listens to the Father and learns from him comes to Jesus. No one has seen the Father except the one whom is from God, which is Jesus. So he has seen the Father, and he testifies of God. So only he has seen the Father. And I tell you the truth, he that believes has everlasting life. And Jesus says if we believe in him, then we'll have everlasting life. And he is the bread that we need to feed on, and his word is what we need to feed on. But we need to have a relationship with him as well. It's very important to have a relationship with your Father and with Jesus, who is our God and he's our brother as well. And he's in heaven at the moment. And we need to, in this last days, we need to make sure that we have a relationship with them. Because without that, God cannot teach us anything. If you do not have a relationship with somebody, you cannot be taught by them. There are so many lies going on in this world and in churches. I realized that many, many, many years ago when I used to go to church. I haven't found a church at the moment that would actually teach and believe what I believe in. I did meet a person like that a few years ago when I was in South Africa. His name was Cedric, but he passed away. It was his time to go, and he knew it was coming. God kept him alive for a bit longer than he thought. He had things to prepare in his life before he decided, or before God took him. So God makes sure that we wrap up everything perfectly before he takes us. But he thought like I did, and it was so amazing to meet. There's very few people that I actually meet that knows God truly as Father, as God. It's so amazing when you meet people like that. And as I said, there aren't many of them, because most people let the world get between them and God, and they just don't know God. I went through like that. I met God when I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I think I've said this before. I come from a very violent alcoholic family, and I had a desire to go to church because my aunt dressed up so beautifully, and I was always dressed as a boy, or because there wasn't much attention given to me or even to my brothers, and we basically raised ourselves. But when I saw my aunt dress up beautifully, I also wanted to have a lovely dress, and I wanted to go where she went. So that's how I ended up in church. And I was sent to Sunday school, and after Sunday school, when I went to go and look for my aunt, walked into the church, and I heard the minister say that if you need anything in this world, just ask God and He will help you. And that changed my life. That's how God introduced Himself to me. He basically said, if you need me, I'm here, and I'll do anything to help you. I had nobody to teach me or to tell me anything about God. I couldn't even read at that time. I wasn't even going to school. I went home and I asked for a Bible, and my mom says, what do you want to do, a Bible? She bought me a children's Bible. Why do you want it if you can't even read? I said, I will read it one day when I learn, and I will learn to read it. But I grew up not having anybody guiding me, and God just stepped in, and He helped me through my whole life. If I look back at my life, I can see Him in everything that's happened in my life, that He was there for me and that He taught me, and He never ever pushed me. I didn't spend a lot of time with Him at first because I didn't even know how to do it. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't read the scriptures, so I couldn't learn from Him. And in Sunday school, they don't teach you much. So to have a relationship with Him, I think through the very difficult time I went through in my family, there was nobody else to go to except to God. And I used to talk to Him a lot. We moved down to the coast, to the sea. And one of my favorite places to go was to go down to the beach and just stand and sit there as the waves broke and the noise of it and just the beauty of the sea. I would talk to God and I would pour my heart out to Him. And He answered me in a lot of ways. And I prayed for my parents. And after 8 years, they turned to God and they got saved. They didn't change immediately as persons. When you get saved, you can't just, unless it's a radical salvation. For most people, it's a period of learning, understanding, and the change comes eventually. God works in you. He doesn't always change you immediately. He does it step by step, and He does it at your pace. And my whole life He's been doing that to me. And there were a few times when He said, I need to step up and get closer to Him. And I just thought there were times in my life I didn't want to take on that responsibility, because when you look at the people that are really big figures in the Bible, the things that they had to do and what they went through wasn't easy. And I think I was afraid of that. But slowly and surely, every time God dealt with me and He said, you're going to need to take a step closer to me. And every time He did, He would reward me and He would protect me even more. And then when I reached what I had to learn, He would take me to the next step. It's like climbing up a ladder to heaven. So slowly but surely throughout my whole life, I've been going up. But unfortunately, through going like that, I was isolated. At school, I think a lot of people would have ridiculed me. I think they most probably did behind my back. We had biblical studies. It was me against the rest of the class. The teacher didn't even feature because she just didn't know. And she had no relationship with God. And there were mostly like boys in our class, and even right through to matric. And in South Africa, you go until you're 18 to school. You start later and you finish later. So it was me against a lot of boys. But I built up a reputation because I was bullied by my brothers when I was little. A cousin one day said to me, why don't you just stand up and fight back? And I thought, wow, I never thought about that. And I did. So they learned to have some respect for me. I took that into school with me as well. And when children were bullied, they used to come to me and ask me to help them. I made sure that nobody was bullied wherever I was, because to me that wasn't right. And I always tried to set right. So I got a bit of a reputation, and I grew up with that. So a lot of people, should I say, respected me and did not want to have a confrontation with me. So I was able to get away with a lot at school as well, especially with having a lot of boys in the class that they did not want to confront me. Because there were times when I had confrontations with boys. My mom took me to learn karate, and it was karate and wrestling. It was a Japanese form of self-defense and offense as well, I suppose. And there was one guy who used karate against one of the children in the class, and he punched him, and there was blood in his mouth and his nose. And I went and told the sensei, our teacher, that what had happened at school, and I said, you need to do something about it, it's against the rules. And then he said, what are you going to do about it? I said, it's not my problem, that's your problem. I told you about it, you need to make sure that the rules are kept. But he got me and to fight this guy and to basically teach him a lesson. Well, that's what I did. I was trained against a person a lot better than me, a man actually. I think I was about 12 years old when this happened. I grew up physically a lot more mature than most people, so people thought I was older than what I was. So our sensei thought I was about 15 or 16, but I wasn't, I was only 12. But God gave me a spirit of a lion, or should I say a badger. A badger never gives up, and it never turns its back on it. It will attack anything in front of it, no matter how big it is or the size it is. And God gave me a heart like that no matter what came at me, I would stand up and I'd go for more. That also frightens people. When you do that, they just don't know what to do with you, because they don't know what, you hit you and you're down, and you get up and you come for more. It's just too much for some people to handle. But that's the spirit that God gave me, is not to ever give up on anything. So I learned from a very young age is never give up. Even with what I do, that I would carry on until I can actually do it. When I learn new skills or anything like that, I learned to play the guitar basically by myself. My dad could play, but he didn't know anything about chords because he grew up on a farm in South Africa, and he learned from the African people. And they don't know anything about chords or music or anything. They just play by ear. I'm more scientific. I'm not that creative as my dad, although I did study art, textile designing, and I do paint and do art, but I'm not that brilliant at it. I do love it though. I love nature. I see God in the nature around me all the time, and he speaks to me through nature as well. And he promised me one day that is how he will protect me, is through nature. And he's done it. He has shown me in so many ways how nature actually stepped in and things happen. I find that even like when I go to work and it's pouring with rain, or when I go shopping, I just ask God, because you can't carry bags and an umbrella as well, and it can get wet sometimes. I would just say, God, please do something. I had to carry my guitar. I've got a very big guitar. It's a 12-string, so it's a big thing, and it's not waterproof, the case. And I had to go to somebody one day to go and do music, because I used to write songs, and she recorded it. But if it was raining, I wouldn't be able to go to. And I said to God, if you want this to happen, then you need to stop the rain. This is one of the first times that I realized that nature does protect me. The rain stopped. Now, when I step outside, the rain stops. Sometimes it's just a slight drizzle. Most of the time, it isn't. There are times when I'm prepared for it, and I do actually enjoy it. But it's been very few times that it actually rains when I go out. To me, that's just God who's behind me and with me. Just so many things that he shows me, that he's there, tiny little things. If you know that God is there, you'll see him in everything. He just proves that he is there for you. But that's not the only evidence. That is when you get very close to him, and you'll have experiences like they had in the Old Testament, where you have an actual experience with God. Then you know he's real. But then you have to be really close to him, and you have to get there first. To do that, you need to persevere and to study God's word, and God will teach you. It says, ask, seek, you'll find things. And you must look for him and look for answers. Many years ago, when I used to ask things, it would take quite a long time before I got an answer, because I think I just didn't see it in front of me. So God must probably have to give me the answer in many different ways until I actually found it. Now when I ask something, he answers me straight away. It's just amazing that we don't have to wait like Daniel did in the Old Testament for the angel to come and to fight through other angels, like the bad people, the princes of Persia and things like that he had to battle with before he could actually get to Daniel. He was in Persia at that time. The Holy Spirit is with us, and he's everywhere. I've gone through a really difficult life, but I think it was so full of blessings. In moments there, I could see God in my life. At school, I relied on God a lot because I'm not somebody that likes studying or learning or anything like that. To spend the time doing that was no ways. Even doing homework, I did not do my homework. My friends used to tell me at school that you're going to get into trouble. And I said, no, God will somehow always sort it out for me. And He did. He stepped in and He saved me every single time. It's not often that, I got to school, it wasn't checked. It was like, wasn't seen to, or the teacher didn't ask for it. He would give me certain things. I remember once we had to write an English test because I'm not English, so it's my second language. I didn't know how to actually study it and even what to do about it. I thought, well, I'm just going to leave it because whatever happens, happens. And as I got to school that morning, there was a girl who had an elder brother. He had done the test on the same topic. It was English literature. I can't remember exactly what it was. And she says, that her brother actually did this. She had a paper. She gave it to everybody to read it, to summarize what the whole thing was about. And I read it. It wasn't really easy English. It was quite complicated. But for some reason, I understood it because I grew up reading an English Bible and went to English church. I think my English was a bit better than most people at school. That day, I wrote down things that I can't even remember now. I scored 96% or something like that for that test. The teacher was really impressed. And then she said to me afterwards, I must read it to the rest of the children. And when I read it, they couldn't understand it because the words that I saw and that I used in were really, really quite big words for us being Afrikaners. But I understood it. It was quite amazing. And that's how God showed me so many things. Like even with geography, I used to love cowboy books, American cowboy books. By reading them as J.T. Edson, he would write about the history of the Red Indians and where they lived and how they lived in the mountains. And I learned a lot about geography through that. And that's the answers I wrote in my geography exams at the end of my school year. Although we had to do South African geography, but they couldn't mark it wrong because it was right. So in things that I really enjoyed, God gave me the answers. Science, I enjoy science because God is a scientist. How He's created things. And even scientists now, when they are really truly honest, they will say that they don't know anything. They have ideas, hypotheses, and they believe. They don't know how things are made, how things work. Even that time back when the science became a thing, they were Christians. They wanted to get to know God through science, through His creation. They were interested in learning about God through His creation, and Newton was really into that. So he was looking for answers through science. Even now, the scientists don't know. They really don't know what is going on in this world. They think they do. The most interesting thing is that I find is that there's nothing that's solid. Everything is vibrations and it's held together with energy. I believe that energy is Holy Spirit. But the fact that everything vibrates, to me, that is really quite astounding. That is why music can touch our hearts. Music can make us angry. Music can make us sad because of the vibrations that come from it. The vibrations we send out to the world is how people perceive you, is what you vibrate. Is they can't see it, but people do feel it. Some people, when they walk in the room, there's a presence around them. I always wonder, how do you feel that? It also says we can change the atmosphere around us by praising and worshiping God. How you live, you can change the atmosphere. If you have a depressing atmosphere around you, if you are joyful and happy, you are truly thankful for what God's given to you and what He's done and created around you, that can change the atmosphere around you. And it will draw people to you as well. I found as well that people feel safe around me, which is amazing because I feel safe that God is with me. Wherever I go, even though my mom always said that she made me do karate so I could protect myself one day, I always feel I don't need to because God is there to protect me. He has always been there for me. In growing up, as I said, with an alcoholic family, the adults and the friends were all alcoholics and they were always drunk around us. And I had some really bad experiences with that. But God stepped in and He stopped a lot of things happening in my life growing up with drunk people around me. But I did grow up with a fear of drunk men because they become very unreasonable and do things that they shouldn't do. But God protected me and He never let anything really happen. But I was scared of them. That's one thing I avoided my whole life. But because of what my parents were like, I decided I didn't want to be like that. God was the most important thing in my life. So he was the person that I looked to learn from, not from my parents. Because normally you learn a lot of things from your parents. But sadly, I have to say I learned nothing from my parents, basically. Very little. In a way, I regret it, because both my parents were really good gardeners and growing things. My mom was good at sewing and knitting and things like that, and I would have liked to have learned more. I can sew. I taught myself to do that as well, and because I studied textile designing, and you have to get somebody to make the designs that you create. When you do a design on material, you print it, and then you have to get it sewn up. I didn't have the money to get dressmakers to do that for me, so I learned how to do that myself through maths. I do my sewing, I do my music, I do my art through maths. I use maths as my basic of everything. That is how I do. So I'm very specific in how I do things. It doesn't come naturally and creatively like most people would do it creatively. I have to think it out and use it mathematically. God is everything, and he gives us the gifts that we need, for what we enjoy. He gave me a love for music. So I went and I learned the theory of it, and how to read music and all the notes and how it's put together, how to make chords, all those things, but I didn't know how to play the guitar. So it was just practice, practice, practice. And it took many years to actually be able to play the rhythm properly without getting lost, especially when you do chords. To do music notes is easier, especially if you can read music, so that does help. God just gave me, I suppose he helped me through it, because I love it so much. He gave me such a love for it. There's always a reason for it, but music for me is very important. I listen to Christian music every single day of my life. God speaks to me through the songs, and I write them down. Sometimes it's just amazing how he speaks to me. It plays in the background all the time, and sometimes I'll just have a thought, and that song will have the sentence, the answer, right after the question. That is just uncanny how he does that. Most people would think it's a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. When God answers you like that, you need to accept it. Even in the Bible, when you look for things, the answers is always there. You just need to find it. The closer you get to God, the more he opens your eyes. When I used to read my Bible 20 years ago, and when I read it now, I'm learning completely different things from what I'm reading now. And it's making more sense to me now than it's ever done before. I believed a lot of things that time back, that if I'd mentioned them in the church, like the gods, the fallen angels, which are actually gods. I've heard people say that the angels were created at the same time that the earth was created, because they were there to help look after the earth and mankind. But the fallen angels are the ones that messed up with humankind when they call it mated, but that's animals. Somebody said that once, and I thought, wow. How does the Bible say? When they came into women, they started that time back corrupting men with war, with lust, and with the love of power. That's not something God created us for. Jesus came to serve us, and he showed us how to live. We need to serve, and we need to love people around us. We must not try and control other people. But we have the elites at the moment that are trying to reduce the population because they think it's going to save the world. But the end is written in Revelation, and we're at the door of the end. We're going to have 7 years of tribulation. I personally believe that, I keep saying that it might have started already, but I believe we're at the door. I can feel within myself that the end is very near. And as I said, what's happening, if we look at the Bible with the prophecies, we look at AI, I believe that is the power, that's the beast that's going to give the power to Antichrist to rule this world, that will control this world. Because there's nothing we can do if that thing takes over, and it will. A lot of people are saying that AI is scary at the moment. The things that it can do, it can seem more real than human beings. Everything around us is vibration. So these beings are powerful beings, these gods that God created. And he says, I think it's in Psalm 82, he sat in the council of the gods. And there's a lot of places in the Bible. I started highlighting it, and it's just so many times it talks about these Elohim, the gods that he created. And he says, do not believe in other gods. Do not worship any other god but me. Why would he say that? if there isn't any other gods? And he says, don't make idols. So it's not, these gods are not idols. Idol is the thing that you make, that you set up for yourself. These gods do exist, and we see them in the Greek mythology. We see them with the Roman gods, Egyptian gods. They were there. Stuff that they did, if you look at the pyramids that were built, man, even now, cannot do that. The rocks and the stone that was carved out, and the massive things that we wouldn't, even with the equipment we have nowadays, be able to move and to carve out with such precision. That is done by beings that are way more powerful than we are. The other day I was watching Joe Rogan, and he's one who doesn't want to believe, but because he was asking, I think it was Stephen Meyer, I'm not sure who the person he was asking why he believed, but it looked like Stephen Meyer. They didn't actually say in the video who it was, because it was somebody else just talking about this interview between them. And then he keeps saying, because Stephen Meyer said the evidence is there. And then he says, yeah, but there's evidence of the Bigfoot. And he kept coming back with the Bigfoot. But now, let's throw the cat amongst the pigeons, is that these Nephilim, these gods are back. That time back, they created basically monsters, because they mixed their DNA with animals and with human beings to create their own thing. So we see things in which we think is fairy tales, but the most probability is that these things really existed, the centaurs and these weird creatures that we see, because there's nothing under the sun that's new. That is what we're told in Song of Solomon's and in Proverbs. Everything in this earth has been and will be. It's a repeat. Like Jesus says, as in the time of Noah, so it'll be at the end times. So in the time of Noah is when these gods were interfering with man and making their own creations. I was watching another video, and they said it's possibility that this Bigfoot is something that was created by these entities, these aliens. I always said they're not aliens from another planet. They are the fallen angels, and they are the demons. When the fallen angels had children with human beings, they created a being that was not of God. So they call them the Nephilim in the Bible, the giants, the renowned of old, they call them. When they die, their spirit has no place to go, because when we die, we can go to a place of holding or straight to heaven. I'm not sure exactly how it works out, and I'm not really worried about it, because I know when I close my eyes I'll be with God, because he's out of time. So the place of holding, sometimes I don't know if it still exists. I think since Jesus died for us, it would be different. That's not something that I'm going to even worry about or even study, because I just feel it doesn't matter. But the thing is, these demons, they're spirits. That's why when Jesus came on the earth, when you get to a demon, they don't like the presence of God. So they freak out. And every time he came near them, they freaked out. And he drove out so many demons out of so many people. I have had experiences as well when you walk in the streets where somebody would just fall down and kneel in front of you and sort of basically worship you. Or other people would just run and try and get away from you, basically climb up a wall to get away from you. It's a reaction of these demonic beings in people that they have when they meet somebody, that has God in them. So these demons are around as well, and they need to possess a body to be able to be seen, but the angels don't. We don't know how many thousands of these things, because a third of the angels fell. They became evil, followed Satan. So there are quite a lot of them, and they are very, very powerful beings. I had interaction with one that used to give me a lot of trouble, and we see in the Bible where the disciples, when they prayed for a demon to be removed from this one young man, they couldn't. Nothing happened until the Father went to Jesus. And then Jesus says, some of them, you need to spend more time praying and fasting. So it proves that there are some, that these people, and I asked God, what was it that kept coming at me all the time? And the answer was, it's one of these fallen angels. It was not a demon. But I asked God to just deal with it, and he did. There was a person that was, she was a medium in the spiritualist church that was living on the same floor that I was in a flat. And the one morning she came and she said to me, there's 6 people have come to put burglar bars around your house to protect you so nothing can get in. I said, well, what time was that? She says, oh, it was about before 6 in the morning. And I said, no, I was awake that time. There was nobody around my house. So I said, well, she says, there were 3 women and 3 men, and they're all dressed in white. She said, but they haven't finished yet. They must probably come back tomorrow. So the next day she said to me, they came and they finished it. She says, your place is very safe now. And then I realized she was seeing it in the spiritual realm. It's quite interesting when you talk to these people, although their father is Satan, and they can see in the spiritual realm, but they believe that they are right. I mean, she believed that she knew God. She had the power from God, but it wasn't, because the things they do is not from God. We do not use the powers. Those we get from demonic beings or from these angels, fallen angels. They give you the power. And to have that power on earth is not the right thing. Jesus told us we must trust in him, to stand still and just wait for him. God will deal with our problems for us. Often God does. In my life, I've seen it so many times. Just don't react. It's taken me a very long time in my life. And sometimes I have to really hold myself back when people do things. But I know I can moan, control, complain. God, he will help me through it. So you do need to talk to somebody. I don't have another human being that I can talk to about what God's teaching me and my relationship with him. So I talk to him, and it's the only person I can talk to. He's there. He listens to me. Always has been. As a child, I grew up very isolated and lonely, because being a Christian and so close to God, other children don't understand that. They must probably thought I was really off my head and nuts. The small village I lived in as well, I think I was avoided by a lot of people because everybody knew who I and what I believed in and what I stood for. The evidence is there. Get to know God and he will teach you. If you read the Bible, the witnesses are there. History is there as well. If you believe in the history of the Egyptians and all those things, there is evidence of them being there and of a lot of other things. The evidence of Jesus on this earth is there as well, and of God, what he's done on this earth. Places of the people that lived in the Old Testament, they have been dug out. More and more, they're finding more things. So go and do the research. Because if you don't believe, as I said, we're at the beginning, at the end time. When the tribulation starts, God sometime is going to remove the Christians. When that happens, and you're not a child of God, you'll be left behind to go through some terrible times in this world. You'd have to basically either follow Satan and end up in hell for eternity, and if then you want to turn to God, which is a little bit on the late time, then you have to sacrifice your life to do that, because Satan will not let you live on this earth when he takes over completely. He will, through AI, you won't be able to buy. At the moment, the banks can take your money out anytime. They can block you. So many people that have said things and done things, their bank accounts have been blocked, and they have a really difficult time on this earth. And AI is now starting to take over. We are seeing these beings like Bigfoot and a lot of other things coming out. I have the gift of discernment. Sometimes it can be very off-putting and very unnerving, but I've got used to it, and God's shown me not to be scared of it, just to accept it and to use it, and also to understand that while some people, you don't get along with some people, and while some people just make your life absolute hell, or they keep interfering you and upsetting you, it's because they are anti-Christ. They are anti-you. They're against what you stand for. So Satan will use them to upset you, because he knows what upsets you. The vibrations that you send out, some people can feel it. Children are very sensitive to that, and there are some people out there as well that are sensitive to it. God also makes you more sensitive to it when you get closer to him, because he is the perfect vibration for us. And when he's in us, he protects us. He will look after us. Make sure you go and look for the evidence. Don't turn your back against thinking God is not true. Jesus didn't exist. Because if you make that mistake and you are lazy, or you just don't want to do it, your future for eternity will be affected by it. And it's all up to you. You can't blame anybody else. When Jesus got crucified and Jesus died, he covered all our sins. He went down to hell and Hades and he got the keys back. He took the power back from Satan. So we have the power. It's in our hands through the blood of Jesus. It's in our hands as Christians. We have that power. And Satan can't do anything to us if we've got God on our side. We are protected and under God's wing. So you need to understand that. And through fear, you open yourself up. Fear and worry can open those doors for Satan to step in. That's why we mustn't. We mustn't fear and we must not worry. Because there's nothing that we can do to change our lives through fear and worry. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And if you trust in God, He will look after you. But you need to be close to Him. And the only way to get close to Him is to get a relationship with Him and to be taught by Him. Only by Him. So read your scriptures. Don't read other books. Every time I buy a book, people say, this is a really good book. And I read it and it goes okay for a while. And then it's like, no. I get bored with it, or it's like, no, that's not what I want to learn from God. It's not where I'm at. That's not where God's taking me at the moment. Very isolated life when you're a Christian, when God is your Father and He's your teacher. It's very isolated, but it's so rewarding. Just trust in Him. Amen.